Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. I am Dr. Naeem Akhtar, Professor of ENT. I hope you will be enjoying good health. As you know, due to current situation of corona pandemic, we are arranging online lectures. In this context, today we are starting the lectures on diseases of the throat. Today we will discuss the disorders of the oral cavity. In the oral cavity, we have two types of lesions. One is the benign lesions. The second one is the tumors. The tumors are benign tumors or the tumor-like lesions. On the other hand, the tumors may be malignant ones. First of all, we will discuss benign lesions of the oral cavity. Under this topic, we will discuss ulcers of the oral cavity, ankylosis, commonly known as tongue tie, and submucous fibrosis of the oral cavity. First of all, ulcers of the oral cavity. The word ulcer is derived from the Latin word ulcus, meaning sore. So it is a break in the skin or mucous membrane with loss of surface tissue and disintegration and necrosis of the epithelial tissue. We can classify the oral cavity ulcers on the basis of so many etiologies. For example, traumatic ulcers. Under this heading, we can subdivide the ulcers into the ulcers caused by physical trauma, for example, biting, sharp edges of the broken teeth, dentures. Similarly, thermal trauma may also cause ulcer formation in the oral cavity. For example, cold or hot food or fluid. Chemical trauma. The chemicals, for example, acids, alkalis, silver nitrate, phenol, and aspirin, all these chemicals, they may cause burn of the oral cavity mucosa, and so they may lead to ulcer formation. Radiation trauma. Radiotherapy to head and neck for some malignant disease may also lead to ulcer formation. The second important etiology for the ulcer formation is the infective causes, which will lead to infective ulcers. For example, infections like bacteria. For example, the bacterial ulcers are diphtheria, tuberculosis, Vincent's angina. There are certain viruses as well which may cause oral cavity ulceration. For example, infectious mononucleosis, herpes simplex, hand, foot, and mouth disease, AIDS, measles, and mumps. Then fungal ulcers. For example, candidiasis in the form of thrush or chronic hypertrophic candidiasis. Then spirochetes, especially a very well-known example is the syphilis, which is not so common in Pakistan, but it is more common in European countries. Syphilis in the form of primary, secondary, and tertiary syphilis, which may lead to oral cavity ulceration formation. Then third important cause for the ulcer formation in the oral cavity is the malignancy. So the malignant ulcers may be due to squamous cell carcinoma, carcinoma of the minor salivary gland, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Similarly, immune disorders which may cause ulcers are the aphthous ulcers, Behçet syndrome. Then blood disorders may also lead to certain form of ulceration in the oral cavity. For example, leukemia, agranulocytosis, pancytopenia, and sickle cell anemia. There are certain skin disorders which may be associated with oral cavity ulcer formation. For example, erythema multiforme, lichen planus, benign mucous membrane pemphigoid. Then due to deficiency of certain vitamins and minerals in the body, they may also lead to ulcer formation in the oral cavity. For example, deficiency of vitamin B12, vitamin 6, vitamin C, folic acid, and iron. Then similarly, there are certain drugs which may cause ulcer formation in the oral cavity. For example, methotrexate, propranolol, penicillin, tetracycline, and sulfur drugs. Now we will discuss the management of oral cavity ulcers. How we can manage these ulcers? We can manage these ulcers by taking a proper comprehensive history regarding the ulcers, physical examination of the patient, then certain appropriate investigations, and finally the treatment. History. In the history, we will we would like to ask certain important points from the patient regarding duration of the ulcer, single or multiple ulcers, history of mode of onset, whether it is sudden or insidious onset, then history of precipitating factors, similarly, history of some relieving factors, history of etiological factors, for example, trauma, drug intake, infection, etc., history of any associated skin disease, history of associated symptoms such as pain, fever, malaise, bleeding from the ulcer, etc., and history of radiotherapy or chemotherapy, which the patient has taken for certain sort of malignancy. After inquiring the history regarding the ulcer, we will examine the patient as a whole. First of all, we will examine the oral cavity locally. So local examination of the oral cavity is very important, which will help to diagnose the ulcer. We will examine regarding site of the ulcer, whether the ulcer is single or multiple. Size of the ulcer will be noted. Edge, margin, floor, and base of the ulcer is noted. Then surrounding area of the ulcer is also examined. Second is the general physical examination, in which we will have to look for pallor, lymph node examinations, nails, skin eruptions, etc. Then systemic examination, especially the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, central nervous system, musculoskeletal system, and GIT, especially for liver, spleen, etc. for leukemia. After physical examination comes the investigations. We would ask certain appropriate investigations according to the history and physical examination of the patient. The usual investigations which are asked for are: number one is the blood for CBC, that is the complete blood count. Second, peripheral blood film. Second, urine for complete examination, blood urea, serum creatinine and sugar, X-rays of the chest, post-anterior view, ultrasonography of the abdomen, especially for liver, spleen, etc., bleeding time and clotting time, screening for hepatitis B and C, Mantoux test, tests for syphilis, smear examination from the local lesion, bone marrow aspiration, biopsy, and histopathology of the ulcer in certain cases is required to confirm the diagnosis. Finally, the treatment of the ulcer. First of all, identify and diagnose the type of the ulcer and treat it. For example, if aphthous ulcer is diagnosed, then we would like to give local steroids, and sometimes the systemic steroids may be given for a short period of time. If the tuberculous ulcer is diagnosed, then we will have to start anti-tuberculous treatment. If deficiency of some nutrient or mineral in the diet is identified, then we will have to correct the deficiency. And if malignant ulcer is diagnosed by biopsy and histopathology, then treat the ulcer according to the protocol of malignancy. Now, there is sometimes we have non-specific recurrent oral cavity ulceration. If a patient is giving history of recurrent oral cavity ulceration, then the important causes which may produce such sort of situation are aphthous ulcers, Behcet syndrome, herpes simplex, and deficiency of vitamin B12, folic acid, and iron. If we probe the pathology in these recurrent oral ulceration, we come to know that in about 75% of these patients, there is increased level of circulating antibodies against the oral mucosa. So cell-mediated immunity to oral mucosal antigen is present in these patients. Treatment in these patients having recurrent oral ulceration is unsatisfactory. It may include topical steroid application. Antibiotics may be needed in certain cases. Tonics, iron, and vitamin B complex. And if some sort of irritating factor is identified, such as smoking, use of excessive chilies, or trauma is there, then ask the patients to avoid all these irritating factors to control the recurrent oral cavity ulceration. Now, sometimes we have a patient who is having an ulcer in the oral cavity, which is not going, which is not going to be managed properly. In this case, we will call this ulcer unhealing ulcer. If the ulcer does not heal within 2 weeks of usual treatment, then we must have to take biopsy from the ulcer, and we will have to get histopathology done to rule out the possibility of malignant ulcer, because such a case of ulcer, which is not going to be healed within 2 weeks of treatment, the malignancy must be ruled out. Now we will discuss some of the important diseases which cause oral ulcer formation. One is herpetic gingivostomatitis. This disease is also named as orolabial herpes. This is a viral lesion. The virus which causes this disease is known as herpes simplex. This herpetic gingivostomatitis is of two types, primary and secondary. Primary herpetic gingivostomatitis is usually seen in children. Any part of the oral cavity may be involved in this condition. Clinically, in the oral cavity, there are multiple vesicles formation in the form of clusters, which soon rupture to form the ulcers. The child will have sore throat, fever, malaise, headache, and cervical lymphadenopathy as well. In secondary or recurrent herpetic gingivostomatitis, usually the patients are adults, not the children. Clinically, the lesion is seen most commonly on the vermilion border of the lip, so-called herpes labialis. Less commonly, other sites may also be involved, for example, hard palate, gingiva, or gums. This form, that is the secondary or recurrent herpetic gingivostomatitis, is mild as compared to the primary form, which occurs in children. It is presumed that virus lies dormant in the trigeminal ganglion. When reactivated, it travels along the peripheral sensory nerves to involve the oropharyngeal mucosa. Now you can see in this photograph, the lesion is involving the lower lip. Multiple ulcerative lesions which have involved the lower lip. Another photograph of this disease in which the lesions are seen on the hard palate as well as on the soft palate. There are certain precipitating factors which can cause this lesion. For example, emotional stress, pregnancy, immune deficiency conditions, fatigue, and fever. This disease is treated by avoiding the precipitating factors. Tonics such as iron and vitamin B complex are given to the patient. Sometimes antiviral drugs, for example, acyclovir, may be prescribed. And the patient is also asked to have care of the oral hygiene. The second important disease is hand, foot, and mouth disease. It is also a viral disease caused by group A Coxsackie virus. It mostly affects the children. Sites of the lesion are number one, oral lesions which involve the palate, tongue, and buccal mucosa, and the vesicles which are formed on the skin of the hands, feet, and sometimes the buttocks, hence the name, that is the hand, foot, and mouth disease. In this photograph, you can see a small blister-like lesions on the little finger of the hand, along with surrounding redness. Another photograph showing lesion on the foot, little toe of the foot is seen having the lesion. As far as the clinical features of this disease are concerned, this disease may occur in epidemics in school children with constitutional symptoms. The lesions which appear on the hands and feet and sometimes on the buttocks, they are painful. There, the patient may be having fever, that is the bad smell. He may be having fever, and enlarged and tender cervical lymph nodes may be noted. Treatment is similar to the other viral diseases as I have already discussed. Another important disease that is called the Vincent's infection, also named as acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis. It is similar to Vincent's angina. It's a bacterial infection. Causative agent is known as Borrelia vincenti, which is an aerobic organism. Young adults and middle-aged persons are mostly affected in this disease. This is the photograph showing a lesion involving the gums. Clinically, the lesion starts at the interdental papillae and then spreads to the free margins of the gums, which become covered with necrotic slough. Gums also become red and swollen. Similar type of ulcers and necrotic membrane may also be seen on the tonsils. In this case, we will call this disease as Vincent's angina. Diagnosis is made by having a smear from the affected area for cytology and culture sensitivity. Treatment number one is systemic antibiotics such as penicillin or erythromycin or some cephalosporins such as cephradine plus metronidazole are given to the patient. Then frequent mouth washes with solution containing sodium bicarbonate. The patient is asked to have improvement in the dental and oral hygiene. The patient is also given tonics and good nutrition diet. Then another important disease which can cause oral cavity ulcer formation is the candidiasis, also named as moniliasis. This disease is caused by a fungus known as Candida albicans. It is of two types, thrush and chronic hypertrophic candidiasis. First, we will discuss the thrush. Thrush is characterized by white to gray patches on the oral mucosa and tongue. If these patches are wiped off, they leave an erythematous mucosa. Now you can see in this photograph the tongue coated with whitish slough. This is called the thrush, oral candidiasis. Predisposing factors which favor the development of thrush are: number one is the malnourished infants and children. Secondly, immunocompromised adults. The adults may be immunocompromised due to certain chronic diseases such as chronic systemic illness, malignancy, diabetes mellitus, chronic renal failure. Prolonged use of antibiotics may also lead to decreased immunity. Then use of certain cytotoxic drugs, use of prolonged steroids, may also lead to immunocompromisation and radiotherapy to head and neck. All these conditions, they lead to decreased immunocompromise in adults, and in this way they may predispose the patient to develop the thrush. Treatment is, number one is local application of the antifungal drugs, for example, nystatin or clotrimazole solution. The patient is given tonics and he is also advised to avoid the offending predisposing factor. And if the patient is having some sort of chronic illness, he will have to treat that patient efficiently. The second type of fungal disease is the chronic hypertrophic candidiasis, that is also named as candidal leukoplakia. This lesion appears as a white patch which cannot be wiped off. Mostly it affects the anterior buccal mucosa just behind the angle of the mouth. Treatment is excisional surgery. Then very important type of ulcer in the oral cavity is the aphthous ulcers. These ulcers are recurrent and they are superficial. Usually, these occur on the movable mucosa of the oral cavity. For example, inner surfaces of the lips, buccal mucosa, tongue, floor of mouth, and soft palate. Now, it is very important to note that aphthous ulcers, they do not appear on the hard palate and gums. There are two types of aphthous ulcers. One is minor aphthous ulcers, second is the major aphthous ulcers. Minor aphthous ulcers, they are more common, they are multiple. The size of the minor ulcer is 2 to 10 millimeter. They have a central necrotic area and a red hollow. They heal in about 2 weeks period without leaving a scar. In this photograph, you can see a small ulcer on the inner side of the lower lip. Another photograph showing a small minor ulcer on the inner aspect of the lower lip. Major aphthous ulcer. It is a bigger one. Size ranges from 2 to 4 centimeter. Not in millimeters, the size is 2 to 4 centimeter. It heals with a scar. When one ulcer heals, it is soon followed by another ulcer. Etiology of the aphthous ulcer. Exact etiology is still unclear, but some of the theories, they may favor an autoimmune process. The aphthous ulcers may be formed during the state of stress or anxiety due to hormonal changes. It may occur due to viral infection and sometimes due to nutritional deficiency, for example, vitamin B12, folic acid, or iron deficiency. Now, this aphthous ulcer should be differentiated from viral ulcers. In aphthous ulcers, the ulcers are frequently having recurrence, but in viral ulcers, there is no frequent recurrence. In aphthous ulcers, the movable mucosa of the oral cavity is involved, whereas in viral ulcers, involvement of the other parts of the mucosa is more commonly seen. The constitution symptoms, for example, fever, malaise, and enlargement of the neck lymph nodes are not present in aphthous ulcers, whereas constitutional symptoms, they are seen in viral ulcers. Treatment for the aphthous ulcers is number one is the local application of steroids. Antibiotics may be prescribed if there is associated infection. Tetracycline 250 milligram dissolved in 50 milliliter of water. This is used as mouth gargles by the patient, and then this solution may be swallowed by the patient at least 3 to 4 times a day. The local application of oral gel containing lignocaine on the affected part if the patient complains of pain. Sometimes the ulcer can be cauterized with 10% silver nitrate if it does not heal. The patient is advised to improve the orodental hygiene, and he is also given tonics, for example, B complex, vitamin C, and iron to improve the immunity of the patient. Then comes the Behcet syndrome, also called oculo-orogenital syndrome. This disease involves the eye, oral cavity, and genitalia. This syndrome is characterized by a triad of aphthous-like ulcers in the oral cavity, genital ulceration, and uveitis. The edge of the ulcer is characteristically punched out. There may also be lesions of the skin, joints, and central nervous system. Treatment is oral steroids, local application of steroids on the ulcers. Now you can see in this photograph mucocutaneous lesions in which there is recurrent oral cavity ulcer formation involving the mainly tongue. Then similarly, genital manifestations may be seen in males on the penis and scrotum, and in the females, vulva, vagina, groin, and cervix may be involved. And this photograph is showing ocular involvement, showing the posterior uveitis. And you may also note that there is pus in the anterior chamber associated with uveitis, which is indicated by the black arrow. After discussing the oral cavity ulceration, then comes the ankylosis, that is the tongue tie. You know, a mobile tongue is very important to perform certain functions. For example, to maintain orodental hygiene, to clean the debris from the oral cavity, to prevent formation of dental plaque, and to speak certain words. It is important to note that a true tongue tie, which is present after 2 years of age, a true tongue tie which produces symptoms is uncommon. It is noted that if the tongue can be protruded beyond the lower incisors, it is unlikely to cause speech defects. This is the photograph showing you tongue tie. Another photograph showing tongue tie, anterior tongue tie, and the second photograph is showing you the posterior tongue tie. The treatment, as you know, if there is a true tongue tie, then it can be managed surgically by giving a horizontal cut. By using retractor. This is the retractor which is placed in the floor of the mouth. In this way, this detector will make the tongue tie more prominent, and it can be incised later on. So the treatment, if the simple incision is made, if the thin mucosal folds make the tongue tie. On the other hand, if the tongue tie is a true one, then transverse release of the tie is made, and after releasing the tie, then the wound is closed vertically. The last topic to be discussed today is the submucous fibrosis. Submucous fibrosis is a chronic insidious disease characterized by development of fibrous tissue in the submucosal layers of the oral cavity, usually and sometimes the pharynx. Etiology. Exact etiology is not known. Anyhow, some of the predisposing factors have been found to be responsible. For example, age and sex. This disease is most commonly seen in the age group of 20 to 40 years. Females have been seen to be affected more as compared to the males. Second important risk factor is the prolonged local irritation due to betel nut alone, pollen containing the nut. As you know, the nut causes number one, mechanical irritation due to its hard surface. Number two, chemical irritation due to its chemical called ericoline. Similarly, chewing of tobacco, smoking, excessive use of chilies, excessive use of spices, all these may help to cause the submucous fibrosis. There are certain deficiency in the diet, for example, vitamin B complex, vitamin A, and deficiency of iron. Similarly, localized collagen disease, there are certain racial factors as well which may be involved to cause the submucous fibrosis. Because this disease is mainly seen in India and Pakistan or their origin living abroad. Sporadic cases have also been reported from Nepal, Thailand, South Vietnam, and Sri Lanka. Pathologically, it is characterized by atrophy of the epithelium, transformation of connective tissue of lamina propria into fibrous tissue, sometimes formation of vesicles which rupture to form the ulcers. In later stages of the disease, when fibrosis is marked, there is progressive erythemismus and difficulty in protruding the tongue. Risk of submucous fibrosis. It is considered to be a risk factor for development of malignancy because it may undergo a malignant change. Similarly, leukoplakia and squamous cell carcinoma may also be associated with submucous fibrosis, perhaps due to common etiological factors which are also involved in these pathological conditions. Clinically, the patient will present with soreness of the mouth, difficult to tolerate chilies or spicy food, burning sensation in the throat, repeated episodes of formation of vesicles on the palate and tonsillar pillars, difficulty in opening the mouth fully, that is trismus, and difficulty in protruding the tongue. If you examine these patients on examination of the oral cavity, in initial stages of the disease, there is patchy redness of the oral mucosa. with formation of vesicles which rupture to form the superficial ulcers. These findings of submucous fibrosis are more marked over the soft palate, fascial pillars, and buccal mucosa. In later stages of the disease, when fibrosis develops in the submucosal layer, there is blanching of the mucosa. Visible fibrotic bands can be seen in the affected areas of the oral cavity. Trismus will be there. Difficulty or even inability to protrude the tongue. And if you palpate these oral cavity, the fibrotic bands can be felt. Now, this is the picture showing different parts of the oral cavity which are affected by the submucous fibrosis. This is another photograph showing oral submucous fibrosis, which is associated with oral leukoplakia in the photograph A, while the photograph B showing oral malignancy. Another photograph which is showing blanching seen over the left buccal mucosa in the upper photograph, while the lower photograph is indicating blanching seen on the ventral surface of the tongue, floor of the mouth, and restricted movements of the tongue as well, if you ask the patient to protrude the tongue. Upper photograph is showing decreased mouth opening, that is called the trismus. The patient can open mouth to some extent, whereas in the lower photograph, soft palate and fascial pillars showing redness. Another photograph of submucous fibrosis showing soft palate blanching and shrunken uvula seen in the posterior part, whereas the lower photograph is showing the leukoplakic patch. Treatment. Treatment is medical as well as surgical treatment. In medical treatment, the most important part of the medical treatment is the steroids. Steroids in the form of local or topical injection of steroid into the affected area alone, or local or topical injection of steroid combined with Hyalase into the affected area. The dose is 4 milligram dexamethasone and 1500 international units Hyalase twice a week for 8 to 10 weeks. This brings marked improvement in symptoms and relieves the symptoms. Second, the patient is asked to avoid the predisposing factors such as betel nuts, pan, tobacco, smoking, and pungent spicy foods. If the patient is having pallor and some sort of deficiency in the diet, he should be asked to improve the diet as well. As far as the surgical treatment of submucous fibrosis is concerned, surgical excision of the fibrous bands under general anesthesia is done to relieve the trismus. It may sometimes be successful, but usually it fails, which will result in more fibrosis and disability. Sometimes laser surgery may be used to cut the fibrous bands, may be more beneficial to the patient. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.